I just met a guy, a very one of the biggest empresarios from Argentina.
Entrepreneurs.
Yes, entrepreneurs. He runs laboratorios.
Labs.
Yes, labs.
Yeah.
And he said, I have a dream to open a restaurant. And I was 23 years old.
Wow.
And he said, let's open a restaurant together. And he was my mecenas, actually. And we opened that restaurant called Llers.
Okay.
And that was, Llers is the name of a little town in Catalonia that his father born in Llers. And we opened Llers. And when we opened, nobody knows nothing about me, about Llers, anything.
Okay.
So we opened the restaurant, and I wasn't ready, to be honest, to open a restaurant and to run a restaurant. I learned.
And manage staff
exactly,
and all
everything.
that.
But he gave me the opportunity. And I make many mistakes, and he lost a lot of money, but he doesn't care. He said, this is my dream.
Okay.
I just want to be the best restaurant in Buenos Aires. This is your responsibility. Don't worry about the money. I'm the guy that's going to organize the money.
Nice.
And eventually, after 5 years, the restaurant was, I don't know if it was the best restaurant, but we went probably in the 5 top restaurants in Buenos Aires.
Have you decided what you're going to get?
Oh, yeah, definitely we're going to get one of each.
One of each. Got it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of One of Each. Today, it's a very special day because we're starting the second season. So again, we have an amazing lineup of people from the industry, great friends with great stories. So I'm super excited to start this second season. And before I introduce my guests, I wanted to remind you to please, and to ask you to please follow us on Instagram, like us, like our content, subscribe on our YouTube channel, comment if you have any comments, any recommendations. We're also on Patreon, and you'll start seeing new content there. So thanks again for your support, and hope you enjoy this second season of One of Each. And today I have here Fernando Trocca from Buenos Aires. And it's not easy to introduce somebody like Fernando, and we're going to talk about it. But you are probably in Latin America one of the chefs that paved the road to so many young chefs, young talents that today, I wouldn't say they have it easy because it's still a tough job. But like today, Latin American food is better known around the world. Everybody wants to be a chef. Any young kids loves the food scene, wants to be a chef. But, and I'm not calling you old or anything. We are probably older than many of the young chefs around there. But you definitely, with a group of many talented chefs in the region, paved the road to what Latin America is today in terms of our food scene, how the food scene is known and respected all over the world. And again, I thank you as a food lover for that, and welcome you to One of Each, Fernando.
Thank you, Nidal. Thank you. Yes, I am old. Don't worry. I'm 58 years old. So I started around 35 years ago in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, which is very inspiring because, and we're going to talk about amazing young chefs who are doing great things today. And I'm going to start by remembering one episode. You know me, I love food. I love going to restaurants. And of course, 20 years ago, I think it was like 20 years ago, you'll remind me now, I didn't know as many chefs as I know today. Definitely, I didn't know you personally. When did Sucre open?
Sucre, Buenos Aires opened 22 years ago.
22 years ago. Okay, I used to, believe it or not, I used to run marathons or half marathons. And I was training to run the Buenos Aires Marathon.
Okay.
I think it was like 20 years ago, maybe 18 years ago. Funny thing, I didn't end up running it because I hurt my back like 3 weeks before the marathon on a long run. But I had tickets, bought, hotel reservations, everything. I was going there with a group of friends. And one of the main meals that we had planned and we did was Sucre, which I remember. Again, today there's so many exciting places in Latin America, but I remember entering, looking at the wine cellar in the middle. It was amazing. The food was great, of course, but it's one of my first experiences in Latin America of that place that you are excited to go, that you are like counting the days. So thank you for that experience, even before we knew each other, no?
Yeah.
And
So that was probably 2002, 2003, 2004.
probably, yeah.
And
yeah.
that was the beginning of Sucre. Sucre was like a huge success in Buenos Aires.
I believe it. And it's still going, no?
Still, yeah,
No,
not like before, but in that moment when we opened Sucre, it was a completely different scene in Buenos Aires, and Sucre was a restaurant that broken all the rules at the time.
In what sense?
In many sense, because it was a big restaurant that opened, was a big investor, and it was the wine at the time. It was the beginning of the Argentinian, it was the beginning of the trendy in terms of wines. So we put the wines in the middle of the restaurant in a huge concrete wine cellar. Then we also decide to do a huge bar that also was not common at the time. We decide to do an open kitchen that also it wasn't a very common in restaurants, and we opened the restaurant with different partners, and before we opened Sucre, I was living in New York, and that was my first time that I was working in a restaurant with an open kitchen. So the idea to do an open kitchen came from my experience in New York. Even the Latin food, I was doing Latin food in New York. That was very new for me because before New York, I was doing French cuisine or Mediterranean. I was working in Spain, in Italy, in France. But New York gave me all those, that a different experience to work in an open kitchen, to explore Latin food. That, everyone think that even the guy that the owner of the restaurant at the moment was a French guy. That when he hired me, he say, "I want to do a Latin cuisine
in New York."
And because Latin food at the moment was only one restaurant called Patria. The chef was Douglas Rodriguez, very famous chef at the moment, and so he was trying to do Latin food. And I say, look, I don't do, I'm not an expert to do Latin food. And he said to me, but you came from Argentina. I say, yes, it's true. But Argentina,
I can do gnocchis and steak.
Exactly. Argentina, it's obviously Latin America. We are Latins, but probably Argentina is one of the countries that's very different in terms of gastronomy compared with all the rest of Latin America. And the best example that I always say is that in all Latin America, they use coriander. Argentina was the only country, maybe Uruguay, that we use parsley. Now we use coriander because it's trendy, but Brazil, Mexico, Peru, Venezuela, Colombia, it's all, even Chile, it's coriander. They don't use parsley.
And that's because of the Italian...
Exactly, and Spanish influence. So Argentina, our food in Argentina, as you know, it's exactly gnocchis or arroces or
Milanesas.
paella, milanesas. So we are Latins, but in terms of food, we are not very Latins.
Yeah. No, and I remember going back to how breakthrough was Sucre. I lived there in 2018, I think. 2000, I wish. 1998, I met 1999. I was just started working for Ernst & Young, and one of my first projects was in Buenos Aires. I lived there for, I think, like 5 or 6 months. And the restaurants that were like Cabaña Las Lilas, or I don't remember if La Cabrera was open.
Yes.
It was like
steakhouses,
Yes.
Spanish restaurants,
Llegarí.
Italian restaurants, or cantinas,
Yes,
or
exactly.
bodegones. But
That was the offer.
probably at the time was no any Asian restaurant or not any, maybe one or two Japanese.
Yeah, I remember one green bamboo, blue bamboo.
Green bamboo.
Was,
Yeah, that was one of the first ones.
that was, I think,
Yes,
our
Thai food.
only option for Asian.
Actually, it was the first one, not one
Wow.
of the first ones.
Okay,
it was
imagine.
the first restaurant still open,
Wow.
doing Thai cuisine.
Amazing. Nice. And now you have Indians, you have,
Now it's completely different.
It's great. So let's go back to those days. You mentioned that you, before opening Sucre, you went to New York. But even before going to New York, you were already working in kitchens. You work with Francis Mallmann. How was that experience? And I also read that, and as many, which is a beautiful thing, many of the guests that we've had here at One of Each, they go back to their grandmas, to how eating her food or how cooking with her, with them, like planted that seed.
Yes.
That became like a career, life choice, no?
Definitely, that was my case. My family, I lost my mother when I was 11, very young. I was a kid, actually. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, Serafina, in San Telmo.
Okay.
And she used to have, she had a pension. So she was renting rooms. And she was an amazing cook. Unbelievable.
Any Italian?
Italian family, but she was doing obviously Italian food, but also she had a lot of Brazilian influence because my grandfather, her husband, he was from Portugal.
Okay.
So, and my grandfather had family in Rio de Janeiro. So because we had family in Rio de Janeiro, my grandmother bring ideas. She was doing for me feijoada and many Brazilian dishes, and so I was having lunch at her house for like 7 years every single day because my school was around the corner from her house. So every lunch I went out from the school, I went to her house, have lunch, and then back to the
would you
school.
help her at some point?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, she was, I'm the youngest of 3 brothers, but my grandmother, she had a very unique relation with me. Not with my sister and my brother. Good relation, but not like me.
Okay.
And I was having lunch every day. I was staying at her house like 3 times a week. Not my brother, not my sister, but me. And so I was spending a lot of time with her. She was teaching me how to cook, how to do tomato sauce. Every Sunday she was doing homemade pastas.
Nice.
And so definitely my grandmother was the one that put me the seeds.
Great. And what was the tipping point? Because one thing is enjoying food like many of us do, or having an inclination to cook and everything. But what was the tipping point for you when you said, okay, I'm going to live of doing this. I'm going to make cooking my career, my
I
choice.
was cooking when I was young because just for fun with friends. But I never thought that was a possibility for me to do a career with them.
Yes.
And I was very, very bad in the school, and I had a lot of problems. I was fighting with my father because my sister, she did an amazing career. My brother also, but not me. And I hate school. Eventually I decided to quit the school,
Okay.
the high school.
Okay.
And I didn't finish. I was 6 months to finish my high school,
Wow.
and I decided to...
This is not for me.
Yes. And then one day I remember I saw in the newspaper an article about the hotelier school in the south, in Bariloche.
Okay.
And so I came to my father and say, I want to go to this school and I want to study. I want to be a chef. But it was it was crazy and it was very unusual. I mean, from my generation, we are probably 10 chefs, no more than 10. There is some chef from before, like
Okay.
Francis Mallmann, Gato, Dumas, probably 6 or 7.
Okay.
And then it's a lot of chefs from the new,
Yes.
after me or after us. So, and I have lucky because my father, he obviously knew about our family and our history, and he was watching me cooking many, many times.
Nice.
And he say, okay, I will help you.
Maybe he saw the potential.
Yes, he say
Great.
that was again very unusual because probably most of the fathers, they will say, no, are you crazy?
You have
Chef."
to go to university,
Yes, exactly.
be a lawyer.
And so my father said, yes, okay, go to the south. I will helping. I will helping you. And so I went to the south. I went to Bariloche. I moved there. I was young. I was probably 19 or 20 years old. I was trying to go to the school, but then eventually I discovered that the school was, it was no teachers, no students. So the guy that's supposed to be the director, he came to me one day because I was trying every week. I went to the school. I was talking with the director, and he said, no, come in 10 days, come in 2 weeks. And then one day he said to me, look, if you want to be a chef, go to a restaurant, start to work in a kitchen because this school is not ready yet.
Wow.
So I decided to go back to Buenos Aires. I go back to Buenos Aires and I started to work in a restaurant called La Tartine. It was a very famous place at the time because it was an Argentinian chef with a French family. Then he was working in Paris, and he came to, when he go back to Buenos Aires, he opened this restaurant that was very cool at the moment. It was a very fancy place.
Which area was it?
Palermo.
Palermo.
But when Palermo, it wasn't Palermo.
Wow.
And so, it was like a house, and it was a lot of artists from Argentina, painters, and it was very good for me. It was a great experience, and because I started to work there without, I didn't know anything.
Wow.
And so I was working at the restaurant for like a year, and then Francis at the time had the first restaurant that he opened in Buenos Aires in the middle of Palermo.
Was he already famous?
Not like now, obviously, but it was a very unique place.
Okay.
Francis always was different.
Okay.
It was a very tiny restaurant, probably 20 covers.
Okay.
The kitchen was like a huge window on the street. So I remembered to went to his restaurant just to be outside and see and watch all the chefs
Wow.
working and dressed like a proper chefs
Oh,
with
nice.
a talk
Okay.
and everything. And I was dreaming from outside. I was saying, I want to work in this place one
Nice.
day. And eventually, it was the more expensive restaurant in Buenos Aires. It was no sign, nothing from outside, but it was but it was a kitchen from outside. So one day I was working in this restaurant, La Tartine, and then I asked my father to bring me to the Francis Mallmann restaurant. I remember I put a suit And I went to his restaurant. I asked for Francis. I was waiting for him for like an hour, and then eventually he came to his restaurant, and I say, I want to be a chef. I'm working in a restaurant, and I want to work with you. And he say, okay. And so he hired me as a stagiaire, helping him on he was doing cooking classes.
Okay.
So I started to work with him as a stagiaire.
Okay.
Just helping him on the
Mise en place.
cooking classes.
Okay.
And then I started to work with Gato Dumas. That was a huge, very, very, very famous chef, older than Francis. It was an amazing chef, an amazing person, very unique. He was a character, and I was working with him for a year and a half, and then eventually Francis offered me a job.
Nice.
So I say to Gato, I'm sorry, I go to work with Francis. So Gato Dumas didn't talk to me for 1 year. He was very upset. And then we became very good friends. And then I started to work with Francis, and I worked with him for like almost 5 years, maybe in and out. I was working with him in Las Leñas, that was a ski resort. In Mendoza, close to Mendoza.
Okay. You're right.
So I was working 2 winter season with him. I helped him when he did his first cookbook. It was a great experience for me to work with him.
And then you went to New York from there?
No. And then from there, I have the opportunity to open my first restaurant. That was those years was probably 1986.
Okay.
Something like that, 87. And in 1992, I opened my first restaurant.
Okay.
I'm very lucky, because I just met a guy, a very, one of the biggest empresarios from Argentina. Yes, entrepreneurs. He runs laboratorios.
Labs.
Yes, labs.
Yeah.
And he said, I have a dream to open a restaurant. And I was 23 years old.
Wow.
And he said, let's open a restaurant together. And he was my mecenas, actually. And we opened that restaurant called Llers.
Okay.
And that was, Llers is the name of a little town in Catalonia that his father born in Llers. And we opened Llers. And when we opened, nobody knows nothing about me, about Llers, anything.
Okay.
So we opened the restaurant, and I wasn't ready, to be honest, to open a restaurant and to run a restaurant. I learned.
And manage staff.
Exactly,
and all
everything.
That.
But he gave me the opportunity. And I make many mistakes, and he lost a lot of money, but he doesn't care. He said, this is my dream.
Okay.
I just want to be the best restaurant in Buenos Aires. This is your responsibility. Don't worry about the money. I'm the guy that's going to organize the money.
Nice.
And eventually, after 5 years, the restaurant was, I don't know if it was the best restaurant, but we went probably in the 5 top restaurants in Buenos Aires. And then after that, I decided to move to New York.
Okay.
And I moved to New York.
Why? Because especially in Argentina, like when at that time when you looked at fine dining or where the center of things were happening in terms of cuisine, you would go to Europe, no? Spain, France. Why you decided to go to New York and not, for example, to Spain or other country in Europe?
I was in Europe before. Before we opened Llers, I was doing French cuisine, because at the time, if you want to have a restaurant and do a fine dining restaurant, French cuisine was the only one.
Yes.
So Francis was doing French cuisine, not Argentinian like now. He was doing very, very, very French.
Okay.
His first restaurant was a French restaurant.
Okay.
And
Acerie Gaston was very French when it started.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when we opened Llers, I have the opportunity to travel for first time in my life. I was saving money and I did a long trip through Europe, and I was working. I was working with Massimo at the time, so I met Massimo in 1990s.
I mean, you are very close friends.
Yes, because it was an Italian girl that lives in Buenos Aires at the time, and she put me in contact with Massimo, and Massimo had a restaurant that for me was his best place. And I always say to him, he didn't like to, because he liked the Osteria Francescana. I've been few times, but my memories to work with him in Trattoria del Campasso, that was a restaurant that he used to have in the middle of the countryside.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And I had the opportunity to work with Lydia. Lydia was his head chef.
Yes.
She was the old lady that she was doing pastas. Amazing. It was an incredible experience. So I was working in Italy with him, and then I went to Florence. I was doing a stage in Florence, then went to Madrid, to San Sebastian, and then I opened Llers. And Llers was not French. It was much more Mediterranean, Italian, Spanish. And in my trip to Europe, at the end of the trip, I went to New York for first time. And New York, it was for me like a crush, like for many people. And I was crazy because New York was an unbelievable city with a lot of energy, with incredible, many different restaurants with different types of cuisine. So I was very inspired of New York, and then I started to go to New York every year, once or twice a year, just to buy equipment, buy books,
and see what's going on.
Exactly. And then one day I say, you know what? One day I want to come here and work here. I want to learn from this city. I want to do a master. So I decided to move to New York. It was very difficult because I moved there I didn't speak any word in English, but literally nothing. I didn't have papers, no visa, nothing. I had my son, at the time was 1 year old, and I didn't have a job. But I sold my clothes, everything. And we moved there.
Nice. And I want to say also, make a little parenthesis, because now with social media, internet, everything, it's very easy to see what's going on around the world. Like, you can go online and see the menu at Narisawa in Tokyo, at Osteria in Italy, or whatever. But before, you had, as you mentioned, you travel to try the restaurants. You travel to even like buy the books that probably you couldn't.
No, we didn't have cellulars.
Exactly. So it's crazy how that has changed. But I also think that experience of exploring, like traveling around Europe, doing little stash in different cities, in different countries, going to New York twice a year and experience the restaurant firsthand, going to the bookstores and see the new books. I mean, I think we've lost a little bit of that beauty of exploring and learning by tasting and touching, and not just looking at a screen, no? So
we have many good things and many bad things.
Exactly.
But so that was, So I moved to New York in 1997. It was difficult, very difficult. But to be honest, when I moved there without a visa, no English, no job, nothing, a week after I was working.
Wow.
In an Argentinian restaurant. But to be honest, I had a good background because I before I moved to New York, I have a restaurant in Buenos Aires that there was a lot of interviews and a lot of press from the restaurant. So that helped me a lot. And eventually I met this guy, the French guy, and he was looking for a Latin head chef, but I wasn't ready to be a head chef in New York.
Just like you were not ready for
yeah,
years.
exactly. And then I remember I have an interview with him because a common friend put me in contact with him. I went with a friend of mine that he was my translator, and obviously it wasn't only me to try to be the chef. It was like, I don't know, another 6 chefs with much more experience in New York with visa, speaking English. But eventually he said to me, look, come to my restaurant. He had 2 other restaurants, and let's do a tasting. And I cooked for them, for him and the investors. And I remember that was a moment that changed my life. And then after the dinner, I was sitting at the table and he said, you're going to be the chef of our restaurant. So tomorrow, he gave me the contact of the lawyer. The lawyer make me the O1. And it was crazy. And then that was Vandam. That was an unbelievable experience. My sous chef was an American guy. And we had an amazing relation. He didn't speak Spanish. I didn't speak English, but it wasn't a problem.
Wow!
And Vandam was a very success restaurant. It was very trendy at the moment. That is and I learned that is very dangerous for a restaurant because it was a restaurant that I cook for David Bowie, Eric Clapton, De Niro. Every single one came every night to the restaurant. But because the restaurant was so fashion and so the restaurant was like this in 1 year and then went down. But the moment that started to went down, I decided to go back to Argentina and open Sucre.
Okay.
And
so from what you learned in Llers, in Buenos Aires, and then, as you mentioned, in New York, you saw like open kitchens and probably more diverse food. All that fed your experience and everything to open.
Exactly.
Sucre.
And Sucre was a mix of everything. Sucre was a mix of Llers. It was a lot of dishes from my background in Italy, Spain, and also was a fusion of Latin food that I was doing in New York. And also we have an open grill, a wood grill, so also have some Argentinian touch on the menu. So yeah.
And now we fast forward 20 years, and now there's Sucre in Dubai, there's Sucre in London. Which I remember we spoke. I was there, I think, year and a half ago. When did you open Sucre?
We opened just after the pandemic.
Okay, yeah, I think I went summer of last year to Sucre, London. It's amazing to see. As I was saying before, in Latin America, before, like we praised French cuisine, Italian cuisine, and we wanted all those foreign restaurants and food in Latin America, and now it's the other way around. Now with what you've been doing and Virgilio and Gaston, we're taking. I say we as a Latin America, of course, not trying to pretend that I'm doing anything in that area, but now it's the Latin American food that is going out and is conquering other palates, and it's not anymore like a curiosity or like something. It's like
have a power.
It has power. I think people are understanding it. So it's great that you already opened that. And we're gonna go back to what you have now. You have restaurants now in New York and other cities, but after you opened Sucre, and again, I know as a matter of fact that it was a very well-known restaurant. It was a great restaurant, and you started doing things on TV. I think you have now four books.
4 books.
So.
Yes.
How was that growth from having a restaurant to being now probably more an entrepreneur than a chef? Of course, you are in all your restaurants. I've seen that. But how was that growth from a personal perspective of operating one restaurant to owning several restaurants in different parts of the world? publishing books. I think you're not on TV anymore, no?
No, I
You're still
start
on TV.
again. I start again.
Oh, there you go. So how was that transition from a personal point of view of leaving Los Fogones, as we say in
Yes,
Spanish, and being more on the road?
It's weird because I never planned that. In a way, I feel the same young chef that started 30 years ago. I never have any plans on my career, never plans to do a TV show or open restaurants, never. So every time, still now, everything surprised me. And I like that, to be honest, because I think it's the best way to grow in a way. I don't feel an huge entrepreneur. And I understand that from outside you can say, I mean, Fernando is it's a chef and he's an entrepreneur and he's an empresario. But to be honest, I don't know anything about business. I'm not good, to be honest.
I
in
mean,
business.
you've done many things, so I'm sure you don't
I
see
have
it
good
yourself.
partners. I have good partners because obviously I cannot do all those things by myself.
Of course.
And it surprised me. Like I say, Sucre definitely was a big start. But after Sucre in 2007, I decided to move to Mexico. And I was living in Mexico for almost 2 years. And I opened a restaurant in Mexico with 2 Mexican partners that today they are my brothers. And I love Mexico. And then decided to go back to Argentina. And then I started to work as a consulting for a big company in London. That was Gaucho. It was a big company with Argentinian restaurants.
Yes.
And I was doing the menus, training the chefs. It was a very different job for me, but it was an amazing experience. And then the guy that used to run that company, that he's a very entrepreneur. He's a huge entrepreneur because when I started to work with him, he had 8 restaurants.
Okay.
And I was working as a consulting for like 8, almost 9 years. When I left, he had 33 restaurants. Wow. And he used to have 67 restaurants between Holland, Switzerland, and Germany.
Amazing.
And he sold that company. He moved to London and he started again in London with 1 restaurant and then 33 restaurants. And he sold the company and he moved to Dubai.
Okay.
And then he came to me and said, Fernando, let's open Sucre. Let's do Sucre. Because he say, I believe in Sucre. I think that Sucre still had potential.
It's a great brand.
Yes. And so he said to me, let's open Sucre and let's see what happened, and maybe we can open. And because I know him, I say, okay, this guy can open many Sucres. So we opened Sucre in London, and 6 months later we opened Sucre in Dubai.
Wow!
And I was spending 6 months a year in London. Not anymore. From now, this is new, very new. I decide to. When we opened Sucre in London, it was probably the most challenging thing for me.
Yeah, I was very bossy because it's not like you opened a little restaurant in a neighborhood. It was in Soho.
No, it was a big investment. And so it was a big challenge for me, and I was very proud because I organized a new team with a chef that never worked with them before. And so the first years I was very close to Sucre and the food and everything. And then the company became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they sold part of the company to a huge group in Abu Dhabi. So now he's out of my hands.
Okay.
And so I still have an amazing relation with him. And I came to him and say, look, I don't want to spend 6 months a year anymore. I want to be part of the project because
It's
yeah, exactly.
your child.
But so I decide to only do one trip a year.
Okay.
And
To London and to Dubai.
Dubai, I don't think that
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to Dubai. I'm very happy because
Okay.
I don't really like Dubai.
I don't blame you.
But London is a great city. So now I go back to Buenos Aires because I left Argentina because I was spending 6 months a year in London and then 2.5 months in Uruguay because we have a restaurant there, and then like 2 months a year in US. So I only spend a month and a half in Buenos Aires. But now I say I want to go back to Buenos Aires because it's my house there.
Nice.
My daughter lives in Buenos Aires, and probably now I'm going to do something
Oh, nice.
much more personal, much more like tiny place in Buenos Aires.
And also, we haven't talked about Mostrador, but I think that also comes with, I mean, everything that you've done, again, like very successful restaurants, different cities. And now Mostrador is like, and you can tell better than me, is like a very homey, very like...
That's
like
my
when,
baby. For
when
me.
you set a table and you see the table with all the
Yes.
dishes served, and you help yourself with what you crave, and also even the books. Like I understand the last book is more about home cooking, and so you didn't go into that direction of being like, oh, I'm gonna be like the fine dining.
No, I'm
guy.
very far away from that.
Yeah. On the other hand,
No.
yeah.
I mean, in some moments of my career, I was very focused on that. Not anymore.
Yeah, and that's because that's what you feel
Exactly.
you want to do today.
Yeah, Mostrador, it's a restaurant that we opened 11 years ago in a little village in Punta del Este in José Ignacio in Uruguay that is on the beach. And it's a place that all Argentinians, many Argentinians go to spend the summer there. And my partners are from Uruguay, and I went to Uruguay for the last 32 years. And when we opened Mostrador, it was for me, like my baby. When I was inspired by Ottolenghi in London, and so we opened the first Mostrador. But when we opened that restaurant, we decided and we say, look, this is a place that maybe we can replicate because it's healthy, it's a place that can work in many cities and in many places. And I mean, slowly, step by step, we eventually was growing with the brand.
Nice. And now there's a Mostrador in New York, no?
Exactly.
At the hotel, what's the name of the hotel?
Walker.
Yeah.
We have 5 Mostradors now. The first one was in José Ignacio. The second one was in Montauk in Los Hamptons.
Wow.
Because it was a guy that now he became our partner. He's American, Indian family, and he runs hotels. And he bought a hotel in Montauk on the beach.
Nice.
And eventually, I don't remember why, he came to us. And he said, I just bought this hotel in Montauk, and I think that the food that you do can match very well with our project in Montauk. So he came to José Ignacio, he met us, he saw the restaurant, and he shake my hand and he say, let's work together. And so we moved with the whole team, with 20 people.
Wow.
From Uruguay to Montauk.
Wow.
And we started to do the first season. Now we finished season 6.
And he's the same investor of the one at the hotel in New York.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But at the time he was only, we make a deal with him, but he wasn't our partner.
Okay.
And then we opened in Montauk. That was the second one. And then the third one was Buenos Aires.
Okay.
We opened a big Mostrador in Buenos Aires. And then the fourth one was in New York, in a hotel that he runs called the Walker Hotel, and we opened Mostrador in the hotel. And then last year we opened a small version of Mostrador in a winery in Uruguay.
Oh,
Beautiful place, beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful, only for the summer.
I was, by pure chance, I was in New York, I think, like 3 weeks ago or a month ago. They had a breakfast meeting,
Yes.
for work, and they sent me the address. Okay, let's meet here. So when I arrive and I sit, I look around, and I ask the waitress, this is Fernando's place, right? Yeah. And it was
Just by coincidence.
Yeah. So that
Amazing,
was
amazing.
beautiful place, by the way. And
Yes,
we
it's
had
a small
breakfast.
place, but very good. Yes.
No, it was very nice. And also you have Orilla in Miami, no?
Yes.
And we're gonna talk about Miami because one, we're here.
Yes.
And second, as a food city, I think it's been growing. The last years are crazy, but we were just talking before going live how expensive it has become too as a city. And I'm sure running a restaurant in Miami comes with many challenges in terms of cost and staffing and seasonality. But how was your experience? Also, having opened restaurants in Dubai, in London, in Buenos Aires, Uruguay, and so on. How was your experience opening and running a restaurant in Miami? And how do you see Miami also as a person who's not based here, who's being around? What do you think what's going on here?
Orilla was a project that we create, and we opened the first one in Buenos Aires. We opened Orilla in Buenos Aires, and then we opened Miami. But the one in Buenos Aires we sold because he didn't survive after pandemic.
Okay.
It was very, very difficult. And when we opened here in Miami, I didn't know Miami very well, but and it was a challenge also because the location, we discovered that it wasn't a restaurant for lunch because people on the beach, normally they go to the beach. And
They want to have a sandwich or a taco or
and
something.
eventually Orilla became a destination. And it's a very simple place, beautiful, very nice. They have some Argentinian influence. We are not 100% Argentinian like other Argentinian restaurants, but definitely, first of all, it is a restaurant running by Argentinians. So,
Yes.
And to be honest, I'm very happy. I'm very happy with the consistency, with the food, with the restaurant. I love Miami, and I was close to move to Miami twice in the last 3 years.
Wow.
And we are planning to do maybe another Orilla. We are planning to do a second one in Dallas.
Okay.
There is a project that let's see what happened. But yesterday we have a guest chef from Argentina, Julieta, and it was beautiful because I saw many regular customers
Nice.
that I don't know them, but I was introduced and I was talking to them, and they was very happy, and everyone say to me, "Oh, we came here all the time. We love
Nice.
the food. We like the people." So, but still, for me, Miami, a very difficult city to open restaurants.
It is.
Because
And I think, there's a lot of course, competition lately. What I hear from the industry, from people who own restaurants, I know rents are like super high. The staffing is a challenge. So I believe you when
Staffing is a challenge everywhere.
Yeah. But I think also, and I love going out here. It's become super expensive to go out, but of course, by living in Miami, you start having like a collection of those hidden places where you're not gonna go bankrupt if you go there. But in general, it has become an expensive city. But my point with this is because there's always those fancy restaurants in like 5-star hotels or like celebrity chefs and so on. But there's also like a wave of like smaller restaurants, local chefs. So now there's options, no? And I think
Yes.
that's beautiful. But well, I've been to Orilla many times, and I understand what you say. It's in Miami Beach, but it's not on the beach, and people sometimes they would
Yes.
just want to grab something. So you have to attract people, you have to
Yes.
bring people, which is
Yes.
always a
challenge.
challenge. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I want to talk about London because you mentioned, well, of course I've been to Sucre there. Uh, Recently, for the last 3 years, I've been spending all summers in London. My wife lived there for many years before we got married. And I love that city. I mean, the food scene there is
It's
great.
amazing.
How was living in London for you? Running a restaurant, but also living in such a vibrant city with a food scene that for me, it's incredible.
I never was living completely
Mm-hmm.
in London, but I was working as a consultant for almost 9 years,
Wow.
going to London every 2 weeks.
Wow.
So,
From Buenos Aires.
From Buenos Aires.
Oh. Wow,
I was
that's
doing
many-
that for 8.5 years.
I want your mile status.
No, actually, it was 5 weeks in Buenos Aires, 2 weeks in London.
Wow.
I was doing that, and it was absolutely fine, and I was very happy. Now, since we opened Sucre, I was spending much more time. I was spending 6 months a year in London. For me, it's a great city, like you say. It's a very unique city
Yeah.
with a lot of options. If you like restaurant, you have an amazing restaurants. If you have arts or music or whatever you like, you
Yes.
have many options. At the same time, it's a very intense city.
It is.
And to be honest, in this moment of my life, I don't want to spend too much time in a very intense city.
Yes.
I mean, I still love New York as a city, but I don't. If you offer me to go and live in New York, I will say no, definitely.
I think like you, I love New York, and I think not only food, like everybody who loves art or music or food or anything has a natural attraction to cities like New York or London.
London.
And every time before, like years ago, every time I went to New York, I would say, I don't understand why I've never lived in the city. But today, I go to New York. I love New York. I have amazing friends there. But I'm happy I'm just here for like 4 or 5 days. No,
Yes.
which it doesn't happen in London. And I think what you mentioned now about how like dynamic or hectic London is. We are in East London there by Victoria
Yes.
Park, and I think that's the beauty of London, that if you wanna go like to the middle of the center of the city, you can grab the subway and you're there in half an hour. But then if you are in there's many beautiful neighborhoods where you can have like a quieter lifestyle, many parks, like neighborhood
Yes.
restaurants.
Actually, I was living in Hampstead Heath.
Okay.
I was 20 meters, probably the best and most beautiful park in London, and it's very quiet place. And no, I really enjoyed it. But at the same time, like I say, it's a very intense
It is.
city. Sucre, it's in the middle of Soho, so it's crazy. And the weather, it's miserable.
Yes, yes.
Very difficult.
And any favorite restaurants in London or bars?
Many. Actually, I read a few days ago that closed a restaurant that for me was very good called Leroy in Shoreditch. One of my favorite places in the last few years was a tiny place called Berenjak
Yes,
Uh,
the
It is, yeah,
Iranian, yes, so good.
unbelievable. Very good food but
in Borough Market.
I like the one in Soho.
Oh, I
but
haven't
they
been to
have
that one.
I haven't been in the one in Borough
Okay.
Market. I always because it was close to Sucre, and it's many places. Manteca is a very good place.
We're doing a pop-up with Manteca here.
Oh, yes?
Yes, very soon. So
Amazing,
stay tuned.
amazing. I like
Yeah.
them. And then I went to a new place called Morchela, very good too. And if you want to have a fine dining experience, I went last year to Hélène d'Arros, 3-star Michelin. It was unbelievable.
I haven't been.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I went to Hélène d'Arros in Paris many years ago. And then I went to the new Mauro Colagreco.
See, at the Raffles.
And it was unbelievable too.
Yes.
I don't know. Yes,
No,
many options, and still open and open.
No, it's crazy too. As I mentioned, I spend the summers there, which is probably 2 or 3 months, and maybe one more trip of like 2 or 3 weeks. And the list of places where I want to go, it gets. I mean, I cannot keep up.
No, of course.
It's crazy. But talking about Mauro, I was gonna go there also. Mauro Colagreco, for those of you who don't know, also Argentinian chef. He's been in Paris, in France, for many years. He has Mirasur in Menton, and he's opened many restaurants around the world too. How Mauro's a little bit younger than us. Not too much.
No, not too much. Maybe 10 years.
Yes, exactly. How do you see the new generation or the generation that came after you of Argentinian chefs? And we were talking before how you went to Argentina 25 years ago, and it was like either like Italian or steaks. We just talked about, there was one Asian restaurant. And now the offer is so ample. There's so many talented chefs in Argentina or outside Argentina doing amazing things. How do you see the evolution of Argentinian cuisine? What's going on today? Are you happy with the direction that it took?
Yes, I'm happy. I think Argentina never stop. Even in our worst crisis, that we live in crisis all the time.
I mean, you're talking to a Venezuelan, so.
So even though I don't know why, I think it's because we always want to do things. In the last few years, that it was very difficult moments. They open many, not many, but 5 or 6 restaurants non-stop.
Wow.
New projects, probably smaller projects, not big investors, young chefs that open his own restaurants with great concepts. Even now, open a new place that I really like. It was probably it is bigger investors and beautiful place. Reminds me like Copenhagen restaurants.
Oh, nice.
It's called Ness, and he's a young chef. I mean, it's not that young anymore, but still very young. And he used to have a restaurant, a very good place in Buenos Aires called Proper.
Yes.
Many years ago, and then they closed, and then he moved to LA and he opened a restaurant in LA with some other partners, and then he finally opened a new place in Buenos Aires. And I mean, it's all the time open restaurants, new concepts. I always say that it's very difficult to put to describe Argentinian cuisine, because for me we don't have many typical dishes from Argentina besides the asado or barbecue, empanadas, and some very typical dishes from the north. But we have many very good chefs from
Yes.
Argentina, and on top of that, we have many good chefs from Argentina running very good kitchens around the world, and I like that. And I mean, Mauro is probably the best example.
Yeah, he's been named
Mauro
best
for me
chef
is the
in
number
world.
one,
Yeah,
and he's a guy that he went to Gato Dumas cooking school. He finished. He went to France and he did all his career in France, and he opened this. Well, I mean, when he opened Mirasur was an ice cream shop, tiny ice cream shop, and he opened a very small restaurant, and then he became number one in
Yes.
the world. And
One thing about Mauro that I like is he's been outside of Argentina I don't know how many years, and he keeps his identity. He identifies himself as an
100%,
Argentinian chef.
100%. He became from La Plata, that is a city outside of Buenos Aires. And even now, after many, I mean, to be number one chef in the world, his restaurant number one, whatever, Mauro's still the same young guy from
Super
La Plata.
humble, yes. I have a funny story involving Mauro and my dad. He opened Flori here at the Four Seasons in West Palm,
Yes,
Palm Beach.
in Palm
no?
Beach, yes.
And right before opening, he was like training the team and working on the menu. He invited me to like friends and family and
Yes.
things. And I'm like, hey, I'm great, but my parents are visiting me here. Like, do you mind if I go with them? Like, no, bring them over, no? And he was, at the time, I think he was just named the best chef of the world, no? So, by 50 Best. So we go there, we had an amazing meal. Mauro sits with us. It was a beautiful experience. He was trying, gave us some dishes on the menu. And on our way back, driving from Palm Beach, my father's like, "Oh, that friend of yours, he's a good cook. He cooks very nicely." From his innocence of
Yes.
not knowing who he was like praising. "Oh, that kid,
Yes.
he knows how to cook."
And you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, but my partners here, Charlie and Diego,
Uh-huh.
they're going to do a new hotel on the beach.
Okay.
And Mauro, he
no
will
way.
run all the
Oh,
restaurants from the new hotel.
Oh, that's great news.
Yes.
Amazing
Yes.
news. That's something that we are announcing here in Buenos
Yes,
Beach.
it will
Amazing.
be probably 2020, 26, 27.
Great news.
Yes.
Great news. Amazing. And talking about young chefs and all this new generation of cooks, what's your opinion on how do you see it? Because many chefs today, they go after, like we were just talking about 50 Best or Michelin, where Michelin is available, and sometimes they forget the real sense of the craftsmanship and what it is to run a successful restaurant and not just work for the accolades, for the social media, for the stars. What's your take, having been there, and now probably valuing some other things that are more relevant for you at this time of your life?
Sometimes I think that many chefs are a little bit, in Spanish we say mareados.
Dizzy.
Exactly. And because it's true, all these things about 50 Best, it was for me very good in many sense and bad in some other sense. But I mean, I think that everyone can decide what are the direction that everyone wants to take. It probably depends of the moment of the the moment of your life. I mean, in my moment now, I'm going to be 60 soon in a few years. My goal now, it's not run looking for Michelin star or be 50 Best, whatever. I want to do the food that I really like, the food that I like to eat. I want to open a restaurant for my friends, to the people that I like, a place that I really enjoyed. And this is my moment now. But in other moments, probably 25 years ago or 30 years ago, I was in a different moment, and I was trying to be super fine dining. I was looking for that. But I mean, it's like life. I mean, my cuisine was changing. It's not the same.
Interesting. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just about
Definitely
priorities
not.
in life
Exactly. Yes.
and hunger and
Yes.
what you want to achieve. No,
Yes.
it's a very nice way to look at it. I don't know if you want to share anything else. If there's anything else you want to share with the audience, any
No, I'm thinking we
anecdotal
talk
story?
about many things.
Yeah, no. Thanks a lot, Fernando,
Please,
for your
thank you.
time. I know you are in Miami for a few days, so taking a couple of hours to be here for me,
It's my pleasure.
it's an
Thank
honor.
you for inviting me.
And as you know, Fernando Trocca, again, he just released a new book. Find him on social. It's what's your Instagram handle?
F. Trocca.
F. Trocca.
Trocca with double C.
C, exacto. Trocca with double C. We'll put it in the comments anyway. And thanks again for spending time with us. We always say that with one of each, we want to make you feel like it's 3 or 4 of us talking in a table. So if we made that happen, we are super happy. Remember to subscribe, to like us on Instagram, on YouTube. We'll be having new content on Patreon, as I mentioned. And again, thanks a lot for your support, for listening, and hope to see you soon in another episode of One of Each. Thanks. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you, Nidal, and thank you, everyone.
No, thanks.
Thank you.